Just a heads up, this video is starting off with the Harbinger guild, and I'm going to go into the build guide. I'm going to talk about the skills, leveling, passive points, items, and then it'll end off with another boss skill, and there's monos going on in the background the entire time. So I'll put timestamps down below, as well as a build planner. Check it out. Have fun with the video. Hello YouTube. Today I have an interesting build for you guys. It's pretty trash but also super fun. Basically, the build works like this. We're casting Chaos Bolts. We're spamming Chaos Bolts in order to cast Harvest and Bone Curse. Harvest is our damage skill. It does a ton of damage. And Bone Curse is being applied so that all our hits are applying even more damage, and we're doing a ton of hits. So we cast Chaos Bolts. We cast Soul Feast in order to get haste. We're using Infernal Hunger to stack up Soul Feast, so we only have to cast it every like 6 seconds. So we get haste, and then we have a cthonic fissure running all the time in the background in order to give us more crits, more Chaos Bolts. It's just tying the whole thing together. We're running Wheel of Torment to give us +3 to Acolyte skills, some intelligence. It gives us the melee damage we need for Harvest, as well as the spell damage we need for all of our other spells, as well as giving us an increased effectiveness of haste because we're spamming Chaos Bolts. We love that cast speed. So that's like a high level of the build. Now, to go through like the leveling sort of setup, you can't really jump into this build without getting, I think it's like 30 passive points. No, 15 passive points inside. Oh, no. My bad. You only need to get the first 10 passive points inside of Warlock to make this build work. So once you get the first 10 inside of Warlock, you can start speccing into Chaos Bolts. When you start with Chaos Bolts, you want to go into Abrupt Chaos and then Doom's Vindication, because we want to get first to Reaper of Mayhem. That's going to be the first like major checkpoint of our Chaos Bolts, casting that Harvest. Then we're going to go towards another Affliction by taking Devourer of the Damned and Cursed Blood. We don't want to do any of the physical transformation. So we get those two. And then we're pretty happy. Then we want to go to the left side of our tree to get Exalt and Misery for that more hit damage, and then the Burn in order to increase our Chthonic Fissure's duration. So that's Chaos Bolt's leveling order. Eventually, once we've maxed it out, we'll get Destructive Intensity just for that more crit chance. But that stuff's once you get to like 20 or 20 plus, basically. Next for our harvest, you can probably level with harvest. It'll be a pretty good skill to level with. We want to go into mind harvest, symbol of loss, because that's our damage against curse. Since we're a warlock, we're going to apply a ton of curses, so it'll be pretty easy. And then we're going to take spectral whetstone for that increased crit chance, and then learned weakness. And finally, at the end, once you're like maxing it out, you can go towards death inside for that additional damage with poison. Then bone curse. I'm assuming these three are the three you're going to be leveling with before you get to like select warlock as your mastery. Bone curse is super basic. We're going to start off with defiled defenses because everything we do is a hit, and then make our way towards the right, towards misery, to transform it from physical to necrotic damage, and then move up towards brittle bones to get that kill threshold. And any remaining points we have, we're going to max out Iron Maiden. So that's pretty simple bone curse setup. Once we get cthonic fissure and we can specialize it, the first thing we're going to do is move towards the right side to get acid skin. So we're going to do death from below, pyrochasm, and fissure of wrath. We don't really care about the fire stuff, but you know, we want that crit on hit because we apply so many hits. And then once you get into the later levels and you have less mana problems, you can go from fragile crust, felfire, Stygian current into chaotic rupture. So we want to max out chaotic rupture just because chaos bolts apply everything we do, so we love chaos bolts. And finally, once you're like done with that, once you get to level 50, I think that's when you spec into Soul Feast. You want to beeline like Soul Seeker, Bones of the Accursed, Grim Affliction, and then get into Infernal Hunger because that's the only thing that really matters. Then go towards the top right with Engorged, Rest, and Usurp because we like the mana granted. It keeps our mana topped off and the word generated. That's kind of nice. And then finally, once you have like your final couple points, when you're just about finished with the build, you can go Hellmind and Waning Life into that like left side of the tree for that damned damage. We don't really care that much about the dot from damned. We like the damage, but because we have so many hits, it's just nice to have, right? Item-wise, just do whatever you can for leveling. What we care about the most is cast speed, because cast speed gives us more damage because we're applying like all of our stuff, all of our harvests are based off of cast speed. So Wheel of Torments pretty much, I think it's required for this because in order to get that increased effective haste, we really want it. The +3 to Acolyte spells is huge, the intelligence is huge, and we need to run a staff because we need that melee damage for harvest and the spell damage for the rest of our skills like chaos bolts and whatnot. So since we want both spell damage and melee damage, I think you need to run a two-handed staff. I think Bone Clamor is best in slot. There might be some other things, but the necrotic resistance is nice because we are overcapping our necrotic resist anyways for cthonic fissure. So since we're overcapping it, we might as well get the ward from it. It's super handy. Since we're running a staff, Titan Heart I think is mandatory, and you need plus levels in cthonic fissure. Actually, you might not need plus levels, but it would be nice for sure. That reduced damage taken while wielding a two-handed weapon is why we're running Titan Heart, so make sure you get a Titan Heart. Make sure you're getting a Titan Heart. Past that, I think Blood of the Exile is also mandatory just because we need that dexterity and intelligence. Dexterity will give us a chance to hit our harvest whenever you're casting Chaos Bolt. So it's a 1 in 3, and since Chaos Bolt has 3 hits, I think you cast like 1 harvest every time you cast Chaos Bolt. It's pretty handy, also required. And then finally, for our last required item is Twisted Heart of Eucharos. We need the HP to ward conversion. We don't really care that much about plus levels for necrotic res. The cast speed is super nice, but we need the health to ward conversion because that's our defensive layer. Otherwise, I don't think we have enough defenses. Plus, because we're a spamming build, we cast a lot. We can easily get to 4,000 ward during monos. You're probably seeing that right now in the background. Okay, past that, so that means that Wheel of Torment, Titan Heart, Blood of the Exile, and Twisted Heart of Eucharos are required items. That's 4 uniques. I'm running Chains of Eucharos because the necrotic resist is nice, the damage is nice, easy to get LP. not crazy. Crab rings are super handy while leveling, and if you can ever get red rings, sure, they'd be better replacements, but I think this build probably isn't good enough to warrant red rings. Crab rings are super handy because of that plus to all attributes and increased armor. Bleeding Heart's super handy because we need some sort of leech in our build, and if you have another sort of leech, go for it. But in order to keep that Twisted Heart maxed out, you want to get that Bleeding Heart in order to keep our HP topped off. And so that leaves me with 1 ring and 1 set of gloves. I needed crit strike avoidance from somewhere. I have, I think, 96% crit strike avoidance, so that's why I have an exalted one on my gloves. +8 dexterity, +8 intelligence. I'm pretty high on all my stats, I would say. I'm kind of maxing vitality because I want that necrotic resist that comes with it. Strength is nice because it'll give me the armor I need because I don't have that much armor from all my sources. Dexterity is required in order to cast my harvest. And intelligence because all of my ability skill with intelligence adds base necrotic damage to harvest, and then increase like a 4% more multiplier per intelligence to all of my other abilities, right? Intelligence is crazy for this build. The only thing we don't care about is attunement. But because we're stats maxing so much, I think like red rings would slot really easily into this if the build was stronger. Like I said, the build's not crazy strong. So that's the items. That's the stats, like the character sheets. That's the skill progression. Let's look at passives. So first I'm just going to go through things of note. In the Lich tree, we're literally just going for Crippling Insight because that intelligence is huge. Everything else is pretty handy, but the intelligence is the real reason why we're there. In the Warlock tree, the thing we care about most is Aspect of Death because we love that increased health, but all the curses that come with Warlock are huge. So because of that, we are doing the Soul Stealer for increased mana regen and mana on hit from curses, spell damage for curses and areas for curses, armor and more armor per curse on targets, ward per second, less damage taken per curse on target. We're applying so many curses. Ward decay threshold and ward decay threshold per 1% necrotic res. We're stacking necrotic res, so this makes sense. Wither because it's another, it's a debuff debuff curse on the enemy that makes them take more damage, and now you take less damage from them as well. Anguish because it's another curse, and then Anguish on bosses, plus spell damage for curse because we apply so many. I'm just doing damage chance because the chains are nice and I'm kind of like necrotic anyways. And then double damage chance is huge. This is like, imagine double damaging a harvest that's already critting. That's crazy. And then more crit multi and more crit multi when we do chaotic strikes, which is our double damage. So it's like we have a chance to do a lot of damage. I think my goal is to max out Wreak Havoc to get that more crit multi. Put 1 more point into Aspect of Death for that more HP and more damage. And then, I don't know, but those are the important ones. Acolyte, I'm just going the pretty standard, like, bottom part of the tree for that necrotic res and intelligence. And I like the armor rather than the vitality. I know if you had vitality, you'd get more health and more necrotic resist, but armor's good enough for me. So that's a high level of the build. I'll leave some footage going on about some of my monos and some of the bosses I've killed. Definitely not doing Abroth with this, the damage isn't high enough. But if they ever buff anything, it's not doing anything unholy, so I think this build could be really cool in the future. Let me guys know, or let me know if you guys have any suggestions on how to improve this build or maybe your variants. Catch y'all later.